Hello, this is Michael for the Art of Outdoor Survival. I'm going to talk about direction and time in the woods without using compasses or GPSs or watches. I don't recommend a compass. It's not one of the 10 essentials. I think a lot of people don't know how to use one. Most trails don't follow a straight line anyways, and if it did, the terrain would be so rough and so hard. You'd have to go down mountain cliffs, go through swamps, briar thickets. That's why trails do what they do. They're going around obstacles. And if you're not riding every turn and every back turn that you need to do and count the steps, you get totally lost and mind boggled. The GPS, it's wonderful to have, but in a real survival situation, batteries can die out, and then you're left stranded. You don't know anything about the woods. And so I'm so against that. I've been in the woods a long time. I've never had to use a compass. I've only used it for fun, beelining, just to see where it takes me, see if it actually takes me to the spot. And it works. But unless you're finding a needle in a haystack, it's not really worth it. And you don't really need that kind of direction. Just a basic, common direction kind of can get you in the area that you want to be. But when I go out in the woods, and I'm looking at a map or something, or I just know a general area, I kind of box myself in. And what I mean by boxing myself in like this, up here, I look on a map and I'll find like a river or something, a major boundary. And on this side, it might be a railroad track. And here, this will be a road here. And then I'll be over here parked my car on this road here. So if I walk outside, if I'm walking in that train in that box that I have mentally in my head, and I come to the riverbank, I know automatically I came to my boundary. And if I cross that river, there's going to be a mistake. But I also know that if I hit the river, that the direction I need to go in is totally opposite because the car is totally that way. So I can easily get around when you box yourself mentally before you go on a trip. If I'm trying to just go straight through, and I don't really need to box myself in per se in that sense, unless I'm trying to get back to a campsite or something. Other than that, you don't need to do that. Shadows is basically the easiest way to see direction. And what I mean by that, everything casts some kind of shadow during the daylight. And you can look at the trees, they're casting shadows, twigs, grass, they're all casting shadows. But think of your body. Your body's always casting shadow, and always be aware of what your shadow is to your body, and then it instantly tell you the direction. Common sense says if it's um, um, rising up in the east, the sun's rising up in the east early in the morning, the shadow's going to point pretty much west, and in the evening, the shadow's going to point east when the sun is setting in the west. That's a little bit different in the wintertime. The sun's going to be a little bit lower in the sky, and so it's going to point a little bit northwest in the morning and a little bit northeast in the evening. But pretty much it's pretty close to approximation of what you need to do. And if you notice, the sun travels straight over your head, except for this winter time, it kind of goes this way, a little bit this way. When it gets straight over your head, I'm not talking about noon, I'm talking about just straight over your head. That shadow is going to create a shadow that's very short and it's going to be pointing north. You know that's north. So if I wake up in the morning, I know east is a certain direction, and at a 45 degrees, the sun is pointing. The sun is 45 degrees in the air. Then I know that shadow is pointing northwest. Likewise, if it's pointing 45 degrees on this side right before it sets, then I know it's pointing northeast. I don't have to sit there and think about it too hard. I just look at my shadow. And if I want to walk east or west, let's say I'm trying to walk west, and it's early in the morning, it's perfect shadow. Every hour, the shadow is going to keep going this way towards my body. So to keep myself going west, I just compensate where the sky is. If it's totally above my head and I'm trying to walk west, well then I need to be at a 90-degree angle towards that shadow. And you can do this with the moon as well. The moon's going to rise up, the full moon's going to rise up, and it's going to cast a shadow in the nighttime. A lot of people don't think about that, but it does cast the same shadow. It rises in the east with a full moon, sets in the west. Another thing with the moon is we've got to do this in the camera. It's kind of backwards. When the moon's up on this side and it's crescent like this, the moon's fixing to go to the west side, and within an hour or two, you're not going to see it anymore. So if you see the crescent shape that looks like this, then you know that that moon is in the west. Now on the other side, if you wake up early in the morning, like 3 o'clock, and the other crescent moon is shaped like this on the other side, you know that moon is rising. It's going to rise over your head. It's going to get about right here, and the sun's up, and you're going to see the moon during the day. So that means that the moon's pretty much rising in the east. You pretty much give it direction. Even with a half or full moon, not just a full moon, but a half moon, it can create a shadow as well. So you can use that to your advantage. Just know when the moon is in a crescent, it's slowly going to get 1 hour later each night. It's going to get fuller and fuller and fuller, and it's going to be this part in the sky. So when the moon is full, it's going to be lit right here, and it's going to travel all the way through the night. And that's why when it's crescent like this, it doesn't come up until, you know, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then it'll come over your head and be right over your head right when the sun rises. Um, when you do that, the easy way is when you look at the shadow. Say this is pointing on west. I'm looking straight here. I take my arms and cross myself out. If that's west, I know automatically this is north, this is south, right behind me is east. And you just kind of approximate yourself that way, and vice versa. If the shadow's pointing east, well, I know this is east, that's west, and vice versa. And so you can easily find your direction that way, just on a shadow alone. Here's a trick on a cloudy day when you don't see a shadow. What you do is you take your thumbnail and you take a knife. Let's see if we can see this on here. Um, you can kind of see this big shadow right there. Get this perfectly. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to thin that shadow out. You see how there's no shadow now? You see the shadow on the other side? Let's see if we can get this a little bit better. You see how the shadow thins out? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a paper thin shadow, and that points to the direction that you're trying to go in. It'll work a lot easier in real daylight compared to the light that I'm using. But that's how you can get a shadow. You can use a piece of grass blade, a scale from a pine cone. You don't have to have a knife to do that. Anything that's straight and thin, you just turn it and make sure that the shadow is paper thin, and that's your shadow. Talking about time, well, you got the stars. If you know the Big Dipper, the last two stars of the cup, not with a handle, but the last two stars, they just directly point straight to the North Star. And Cassiopeia, which it looks like a 3, or M, or W, excuse me, um, those are going to point. Those are going to point to the North Star. The North Star is not a bright star. It's the last star of the handle of the Little Dipper. It's going to be a little bit above the horizon, whatever degree you are. If you're 43 degrees above the latitude or longitude, that's going to be roughly about 43 degrees or 28 down in Florida. So look somewhere in that general area. That also will tell you where you are in the world. Um, Time-wise, the world is round, and we have 24 hours of sunlight. So if you divide that in half, you got 12. And so when the sun is rising on the equinox of spring and fall, you got roughly 12 hours of daylight. So when it's rising and it's straight over your head, that's 6 hours. And when it comes back over, that's 12 hours. So if it's rising here and it's roughly 6 o'clock, well, 45 degrees is going to be 9 o'clock. Straight over your head is going to be 12 o'clock. Over here, it's going to be 3. Ooh, can you hear those coyotes? They're really gathering up there. But anyways, over here it'll be roughly about 6 o'clock. And winter is going to be a little bit different because it's lower in the sky. Those are coyotes. Um, It's going to be rising about 7:30 in the morning and setting about 5:30 at night. So you divide that time frame in half, and you roughly get about 10 hours. So straight above your head is going to be 5 hours from when it rose to over your head. Then back over is 10. You just divide that up that way. So it gives you a roughly time estimate of where you are, what time it is in the day. It's a give or take. Not a big issue in the woods what actual time it is. You can do the full moon this way as well. Um, Full moon's the same as the sun. It gives off that light. So you can use the time frame there as well. If you're trying to figure out kind of hours in the day, say this is the horizon right here. If you put your hand right there, and each one of these fingers on a male is roughly 15 minutes, on a woman it's about 12, and on a child it's about 7 minutes. So if you, a whole hand is about an hour. So if the sun is up here, and I put my hand here, and here, and here, that's 3 hours. And you got three fingers, that's 3 hours and 45 minutes that sun's going to go below the horizon. Plus, you got the extra 30 minutes of daylight when the sun actually sets. So if I'm in a mountain, the sun's going to set sooner because it's going to go behind the mountain. What I do is get on top of the mountain, say right there, and the sun's like right here. I know that I roughly got about 45, 50 minutes before the sun goes over there, so I better get camp going. Um, and that's pretty much easy how to tell time. You can do that with the moon or the sun. The other thing is watches. What we consider watch came from watching the zodiac. When anybody knows the birthday signs, if you know the order of the birthday signs, what they did, the zodiacs pretty much rose in the east, went over your head, it was just called Zenith, and then came back over and set in the west. And there were 12 zodiacs. And each zodiac constellation had 2 hour settings, so that equals 24 hours. So any given night, you're roughly going to see roughly about 6 constellations if you divide that in half. And what they would do is when say the first star of Leo was rising right here, they would call that the new watch. And as it came up, the last star Leo would come here, and they would know that was exactly 2 hours. And then Virgo, which is after Leo would come up and have another 2 hours. So when you saw Leo and Virgo completely in the air, you knew that was 4 hours easily. And they would have watches that way. It'd be a 3 hour watch, a 4 hour watch, a 5 hour watch, depending on what country you were in at that time. But that's where actual watches come from. It's from the zodiac. If anybody knows the birthday zodiac order, just remember they kind of go over your head and over here. During the wintertime or summertime, the Scorpio and all that, they'll be a little bit lower in the southern sky. They kind of do this little wave warp, but it pretty much is the same thing. You can watch those stars and know it's a 2 hour from each. The beginning star to the last star is roughly 2 hours. So that's a rough estimate if you're just sitting there watching the stars at night. You can kind of watch the horizon and know how long you've been actually sitting there or whatever. And that's pretty much how you tell time out in the woods. Um, there's all these big methods that you can use to find shadows and time and all that. It's not rocket science. You're not out there trying to be perfect on time. You don't have a meeting to go meet at unless you're in a military operation or it's a life-threatening situation. A few seconds here, a few minutes there, it doesn't really matter. But you just enjoy yourself and trying to get last thing with a compass is kind of reading. If you're up in the mountains and you're trying to get to another peak, you just take that shadow reading. You look at that mountain peak over there. It's pretty easy out here in the west. You can see that certain mountain range. It doesn't change. It's very easily recognized out here. It's a lot of these peaks, and so you can just kind of just know that you need to head west. And as you go down in the valleys and into the dry washes, you can't really see where you're at. You just look at your shadow and know that, hey, if I keep walking that way, I'm going to come up out of this and I'm going to see that mountain range off in the distance. It's just that simple. You don't have to do anything that's really hard in the woods. If you're in the deep jungle, that might be a little bit different because the sun can't get in as well. But you can always do the knife trick I was telling you, and you will always get a shadow, even in the jungle. almost in the pouring rain, you can get a shadow.